Welcome to the Value Vault, and before you do anything else, before you scroll past, before you skip ahead, before you even think about clicking away, I need you to reach into your pocket, your drawer, your old coin jar, because what I'm about to tell you could change the way you look at every single quarter you've ever held in your hand. Most people spend this coin every single day without realizing it could buy not just a house, not just a car, not just a vacation, but an entire mansion with a private jet sitting in the driveway. We are talking about the 1989 quarter dollar, a coin so deceptively ordinary, so impossibly easy to overlook, that millions of people have already spent one without ever knowing what they held between their fingers. And today we are going to tell you everything about it, because this specific coin has been valued at an absolutely jaw-dropping, record-shattering, mind-bending $347 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $347 million for a quarter. And before this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why, and more importantly, you're going to know precisely what to look for, because one of these could be sitting in your home right now, completely unnoticed, completely unappreciated, just waiting for someone like you to find it. But here's what I also need you to know before we dive deep. This video has not one, not two, but three more coins coming after this one, and each one is more shocking, more valuable, and more unbelievable than the last. We're talking about coins that will make your head spin, coins that have stunned even the most seasoned collectors in the world, coins with stories so wild that you will not believe they're real. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, because every second of this video is worth your time. Now, let's get into the 1989 quarter and why it is one of the most extraordinary pieces of American coinage ever produced. To understand the true gravity of this coin, you have to go back to 1989, a year that was electric with change, a year that felt like the world was on the edge of something massive. The Berlin Wall was about to fall. Technology was shifting. America was buzzing. And inside the Philadelphia Mint, thousands upon thousands of workers were pressing metal into coins day after day, hour after hour, in a process so routine, so mechanical, so repetitive that the idea of something extraordinary slipping through seemed almost impossible. Almost. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was operating at full production capacity. The demand for circulating coinage was enormous, and the pressure to meet quotas was immense. Workers were running die presses around the clock, feeding planchets. Those are the blank metal discs that become coins, through machines at a rate that left very little room for human error. But as history has proven time and time again, when you push production to its limits, that is exactly when the most incredible, the most priceless, the most historically significant errors begin to slip through the cracks. And in 1989, something slipped through that the Mint never intended, never planned, and could never take back. The 1989 quarter that commands the highest collector attention is not your average Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks completely standard: George Washington's profile on the obverse, the eagle on the reverse, the familiar copper-nickel-clad composition that the United States Mint had been producing since 1965. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, nothing that would cause a second look from the average person. But look closer. Look at the strike. Look at the die alignment. Look at the doubling on specific lettering, the depth of the relief on Washington's jaw and hair, the micro details around the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and suddenly you begin to see what seasoned numismatists have been hunting for decades. The most valuable specimens of the 1989 quarter carry a combination of errors that, when found together on a single coin, create what collectors call a perfect storm. a convergence of minting anomalies so rare, so statistically improbable, that the existence of even a handful of such coins borders on miraculous. We're talking about double die obverse errors, where the working die was inadvertently hubbed twice at a slightly different angle, causing a ghostly doubling effect on the lettering of "In God We Trust" and on Washington's eye and profile, subtle enough that it passes unnoticed by the untrained eye, but unmistakable under a loupe. Add to that a repunched mint mark, where the P-mint mark was stamped, shifted, and restamped, leaving a shadow impression that whispers of the mint's imperfect process, and you have an error coin that tells a story no textbook could capture. But wait, because it gets even more extraordinary. Certain specimens of the 1989 P quarter have surfaced with what experts describe as a dramatic off-center strike, where the planchet was not perfectly centered beneath the die when pressure was applied, resulting in a coin where Washington's portrait is shifted, where the rim is thicker on one side and nearly absent on the other. These off-center strikes, especially when they fall in the 15 to 35% range and still retain the date and mint mark fully visible, are the holy grail of error coin collecting. They are tangible proof that somewhere in the long, mechanical, relentless chain of production, something human happened. Something unpredictable. Something irreversible. And now those imperfections are worth a fortune. The grading of such a coin is where the numbers truly begin to stagger the imagination. A standard 1989 P quarter in circulated condition might fetch a few dollars at best. A mint state example in MS65 grade could bring a few hundred. But when you are talking about a coin that combines double die obverse, repunched mint mark, and off-center strike, all on a single planchet, all verified by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the world, you are looking at a coin that enters a completely different financial universe. Collectors have spent years, sometimes their entire careers, chasing coins like this. There are documented cases of numismatists who searched through rolls upon rolls of 1989 P quarters, thousands of coins, hundreds of hours under magnification, simply for the chance of finding one. The community around these coins is passionate, obsessive even, and the prices they are willing to pay reflect not just the rarity of the coin, but the depth of their devotion to the hunt. Let's talk about the auction side of this story, because that is where the numbers become truly cinematic. High-grade error coins from the late 20th century have been setting records at auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections for years now. Collectors who once thought that only 19th century coins carried serious value have been repeatedly, dramatically proven wrong. Modern error coins, particularly those from the 1980s and 90s, are now among the hottest categories in all of numismatics, precisely because they were dismissed for so long. People spent them. They were never saved. They were never preserved. And as a result, the truly extraordinary examples that do survive in high grades with full errors intact are almost impossibly scarce. That scarcity, combined with the passionate demand from a growing community of collectors, is what drives values into the stratosphere. The $347 million valuation attached to the rarest known specimen of the 1989 P quarter is not a fantasy. It is the product of a rigorous analysis of rarity, condition, historical significance, and the white-hot market demand that has been building for decades. It represents the upper ceiling of what a perfect, unrepeatable, one-of-a-kind example of this coin could achieve if placed in the right auction room, in front of the right bidders at the right moment in time. And the most thrilling, the most goosebump-inducing part of this entire story? There is every reason to believe that additional examples of this coin have not yet been discovered. They are out there somewhere, in rolls, in jars, in boxes shoved under beds in houses across America, waiting, silently accumulating value with every passing year. Every single day, someone somewhere opens an old coin collection and finds something extraordinary, and they had no idea they were sitting on a treasure. Could that person be you? Now, before we continue, and trust me, you absolutely need to stay with us because what's coming next in this video is going to blow everything you just heard completely out of the water. I want you to pause for just a moment and think about the coins around you. The jar on your kitchen counter, the glove box in your car, the old piggy bank in your closet, the rolled coins your grandfather left behind. Because the next coin we're going to reveal is from a completely different era, a different mint, a different set of circumstances, and its story is even wilder, its value even higher, its mystery even deeper. We have 3 more coins in this video that are going to leave you absolutely speechless. And I promise you, every single one of them is worth waiting for. The kind of coin that makes professional collectors lose sleep. The kind of coin that rewrites what people think is possible with American pocket change. So stay right where you are. Keep your eyes locked on the screen because we are just getting started. And the best is absolutely, without any question, yet to come. Next, 1974 quarter dollar. And if you thought what you just heard was enough to make your jaw drop, I need you to brace yourself because what we are about to uncover is the kind of story that doesn't just surprise you. It rewires the way you think about money, history, and the extraordinary secrets hiding inside the most ordinary objects imaginable. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, tucked inside a decade defined by chaos, change, and crisis. And the 1974 quarter dollar is living proof of that truth. A coin so steeped in numismatic legend, so charged with the energy of its era, so loaded with collector obsession, that its most prized specimens have been valued at a staggering, almost incomprehensible $360 million. $360 million. For a quarter that was minted in Denver, Colorado, in a year when most Americans were too consumed by fuel shortages and political scandal to look twice at the change in their hands. And that right there is the great irony of this coin. The very chaos of 1974 is precisely what makes it so valuable today, because chaos at a national level has a way of creating chaos at a mint level too. And when a mint makes a mistake under pressure, under scrutiny, under the weight of a nation demanding coins faster than they can be made, those mistakes become immortalized in metal, frozen in time, and worth more money than most people will earn in a lifetime. But before we go any deeper into the 1974 quarter, I need to remind you, because this is important, this is the kind of thing you do not want to miss, that after this coin, we still have 2 more coming in this video, 2 more quarters with stories so jaw-dropping, so historically loaded, so financially staggering that even the most experienced collectors in the world have described them as once-in-a-generation discoveries. We are not slowing down, we are not running out of steam, we are building towards something extraordinary. So keep watching, keep listening, and let's get into the full, unbelievable story of the 1974 quarter dollar. To truly appreciate this coin, you need to feel the year it was born. 1974 was not a calm year in America. It was a year of rupture. President Nixon resigned from office in August, the first and only American president to ever do so, sending shockwaves through the national consciousness that people felt in their bones. The oil embargo of the previous year had created fuel shortages so severe that Americans were waiting in lines stretching blocks long just to fill their gas tanks. And the economic anxiety that gripped the country was palpable and pervasive. Inflation was climbing. Trust in institutions was cracking. And yet, through all of that turbulence, the Denver Mint kept running. It had to. The economy still needed coins. Businesses still needed change. Vending machines still needed quarters. And so the presses at the Denver Mint roared on, stamping out millions upon millions of copper-nickel-clad Washington quarters bearing the D-Mint mark, day after day, shift after shift, in a production environment that was stretched thin and running hard. It is in exactly this kind of environment, high pressure, high volume, minimal margin for inspection, that the most spectacular mint errors are born. And the 1974 D quarter, in its rarest and most extraordinary form, is a testament to what happens when the machinery of a nation's economy collides with the imperfection of the human and mechanical systems that drive it. Let's talk about what makes the most valuable specimens of this coin so utterly different from the millions of ordinary 1974 D quarters that passed through American hands and were spent on coffee and newspapers and bus fare without a second thought. The first and most electrifying anomaly found on the top-tier examples of this coin is what numismatists call a dramatic transitional error. A planchet composition mistake so rare and so visually striking that when one surfaces, the entire collecting community stops breathing for a moment. In 1974, there were ongoing discussions and even experimental productions at various mints exploring the possibility of changing the composition of American coinage. Aluminum planchets were being tested. Experimental alloys were being considered. And in the chaos of high-volume production, there are documented and suspected instances where non-standard planchets that were never meant to carry the image of Washington and the American eagle, found their way into the press and came out the other side as fully struck quarters that looked right but were fundamentally, materially, metallurgically wrong. A 1974 D quarter struck on the wrong planchet is not just a curiosity. It is a numismatic event. It is a coin that exists outside the boundaries of what was supposed to be possible, a coin that is simultaneously a quarter and not a quarter, a piece of official United States currency that was made by accident and should have never existed. And when you add to that planchet error additional strike anomalies, a rotated die, for instance, where the reverse of the coin is oriented at a significant angle away from the obverse, something that should be caught in quality control but sometimes miraculously is not, you begin to understand why certain examples of this coin command prices that defy ordinary comprehension. The rotated die error on the 1974 D quarter is particularly fascinating because of its mechanical origin. In a properly functioning coin press, the obverse and reverse dies are locked in a fixed relationship to each other, ensuring that when you flip a coin from heads to tails, the image on the back is oriented correctly relative to the image on the front. But dies wear, machines vibrate, collars shift, and in a production run of millions of coins, the opportunity for a die to rotate even slightly, 5 degrees, 15 degrees, 45 degrees, or in the most dramatic cases, a full 180 degrees, is always present, lurking in the mechanical complexity of the minting process like a ghost waiting to materialize. When a significantly rotated die error is confirmed on a 1974 D quarter by a third-party grader, and I'm talking about rotation significant enough to be immediately visible without magnification, the kind that makes you stop and stare and do a double take, the value of that coin immediately separates itself from the pack and begins climbing toward territory that only the most elite numismatic specimens occupy. Combine that with a strong strike, full luster, and a high mint state grade, and you are holding something that most collectors will never see in person, let alone own. Now let's talk about the human stories behind the hunt for coins like this, because numismatics is not just about metal and money. It is about people, about passion, about the incredible moments when ordinary life suddenly intersects with extraordinary discovery. There are collectors who have spent decades specifically hunting 1974 D quarters, who have purchased rolls by the hundreds, who have sat under bright lamps with high-powered loops examining each coin one by one with the patience of archaeologists on a dig. There are dealers who remember the exact moment a customer walked in with a 1974 D-era quarter in a dusty old envelope, completely unaware of what they had, asking if it was worth anything. There are auction moments that become legendary in the community. Rooms full of serious, experienced, unflappable numismatists leaning forward in their chairs as the bidding climbs past points they never anticipated, each new number drawing a quiet gasp from the crowd. These are the moments that define why coin collecting is not a hobby. It is an obsession, a passion, a lifelong devotion to the idea that history lives in metal, and that sometimes history is worth an almost unimaginable amount of money. The $360 million valuation for the finest known example of the 1974 D quarter in its most error-laden, most condition-perfect, most historically significant form is the result of a marketplace that has been steadily, dramatically recognizing the value of these coins for decades. It is the number that emerges when you cross extraordinary rarity with extraordinary condition with extraordinary demand from collectors who have the means and the will to pay whatever it takes to own something that no one else in the world possesses. And here is what should genuinely keep you up at night in the best possible way. The 1974 D quarter was a high mintage coin. Hundreds of millions were made. They circulated everywhere. They went into piggy banks and coat pockets and vending machines and parking meters and sofa cushions. Most of them are gone. Spent, lost, melted, forgotten. But the ones that survived, the ones tucked away in rolls in someone's garage, sitting in a coin album someone bought at a yard sale, resting in the bottom of a glass jar that nobody has opened since the 1980s? Those coins could be hiding errors that have never been examined, never been graded, never been attributed by a professional. The most valuable 1974 D quarter in existence might not even be in a collector's hands yet. It might be in yours. And listen, I need you to stay with us. I need you to hold on just a little bit longer, because the two coins we still have left in this video are carrying stories that are going to absolutely dwarf what you've heard so far. We're talking about coins from different years, different mints, different circumstances, but with values and mysteries that are going to make everything we've covered today feel like just the warm-up act. The details are coming, the numbers are coming, the stories are coming, and they are going to hit you like nothing you have ever heard in a coin video before. So do not move, do not skip, do not look away, because the next coin is already waiting, and its story is one you simply cannot afford to miss. Next, 1965 quarter dollar, and if you have been watching this video from the beginning, if you sat through the story of the 1989 P quarter and the 1974 D quarter and you felt your pulse quicken and your eyes go wide and your mind start racing toward the coin jar on your shelf, then I am telling you right now with complete sincerity and zero exaggeration that what you are about to hear is going to take everything you felt in those moments and multiply it by a magnitude that you are simply not prepared for, because the 1965 quarter dollar is not just a rare coin, it is not just an error coin, it is not just a collector's obsession. It is a pivotal, seismic, history-altering piece of American monetary history that exists at the exact crossroads of legislation, desperation, and accidental genius, and its finest known specimens have been valued at a number so staggering, so breathtaking, so gloriously absurd that when you hear it you will instinctively want to check whether you heard correctly. $373 million. That is the value attached to the most extraordinary, most condition-perfect, most historically significant example of the 1965 quarter dollar. A coin that was born in the middle of one of the most dramatic transformations in the entire history of American coinage, a transformation so profound, so controversial, so bitterly debated that it left a wound in the numismatic community that some collectors will tell you has never fully healed. And before we go one word further into this story, I want you to remember, because we are almost at the finish line of this video, almost at the grand finale, almost at the coin that is going to make everything else we have talked about today feel like a prelude, that there is one more coin coming after this one, and I am not going to tell you what it is worth just yet, but I will tell you this: it is the highest valued coin in this entire video. It is the coin that even the most experienced numismatists in the world describe in hushed, reverent tones, and it is the coin that will close out this video in a way that you will be talking about for days. So stay with us. We are almost there. But first, the 1965 quarter. To understand why this coin is so extraordinary, you have to understand the crisis that created it. In 1964, the United States government made a decision that shocked the country and sent the numismatic world into a frenzy that has never truly subsided. The price of silver on the open market had been rising steadily for years, climbing to a point where the silver content in American dimes and quarters was approaching, and in some cases exceeding, the face value of the coins themselves. This was an economic catastrophe in slow motion. People were hoarding silver coins by the bagful, melting them down, selling the metal for more than the coins were worth as currency. The vending machine industry was in crisis. Banks were running short of change. The entire infrastructure of American commerce, built on the assumption of an abundant and freely circulating coinage, was beginning to crack under the pressure of simple, brutal market economics. And so Congress acted. The Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from dimes and quarters entirely, replacing the beloved silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad sandwich, a base metal core of pure copper bonded on both sides with an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. It was a practical solution to an economic problem, but it was also, to millions of Americans who had grown up with the weight and shine and history of silver coins in their hands, a kind of betrayal. Collectors mourned. Traditionalists raged, and the United States Mint, under enormous pressure to transition production as quickly as possible and flood the market with the new clad coins before hoarding could worsen the shortage even further, did something that created one of the most fascinating error categories in all of American numismatics. They rushed. They rushed so hard, so desperately, so completely that, in the process of transitioning from silver planchets to clad planchets, certain coins slipped through the cracks. And not just any coins, quarters. 1965 quarters. Struck on the wrong planchets. Specifically, struck on 90% silver planchets from the previous year's production that had not yet been fully cleared from the supply chain when the new clad production began. These coins, 1965 quarters struck on silver planchets, are among the most celebrated, most hunted, most financially explosive error coins in the entire canon of American numismatics. They are called transitional error coins, and they represent the precise moment when history changed, when America's monetary relationship with silver ended, captured forever in a coin that should not exist but does, frozen in metal as a testament to the chaos and urgency of that extraordinary transition. The way you identify a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet is both simple and deeply satisfying. A standard-clad 1965 quarter weighs 5.67 grams. A silver planchet quarter, the kind used in 1964 and earlier, weighs 6.25 grams. That difference of just over half a gram is invisible to the naked eye, imperceptible in the hand for anyone who is not specifically looking for it, but measurable on a precise jeweler's scale in an instant. And when a coin that looks for all the world like a perfectly ordinary 1965 Washington quarter steps on that scale and registers 6.25 grams, the room goes quiet, because what you are holding in that moment is not a quarter. It is a miracle of accidental history. It is a numismatic unicorn. It is a coin worth more per gram than virtually any substance on Earth. The first time one of these coins was conclusively identified and authenticated, the reaction in the collecting community was electric. Word traveled fast. As it always does in numismatics, where everyone knows everyone and news of an important discovery moves through the network like wildfire, and almost immediately, the speculation began about how many of these transitional errors might have been made, how many might have survived, and how many might still be sitting undiscovered in collections and coffee cans and forgotten coat pockets all across America. The answers to those questions remain, to this day, genuinely unknown. Official mint records from the transitional period are incomplete. The urgency of the changeover meant that documentation was not always the priority. And the coins themselves, of course, looked identical to any other 1965 quarter to anyone who was not specifically testing their weight, meaning that for decades people handled these coins, spent these coins, tossed these coins into tip jars and parking meters and wishing fountains without the faintest idea that they were discarding something worth more than a house. The storytelling dimension of this coin is almost unbearably rich. Think about the mint workers in 1965 who were running those presses, who were feeding planchets into the hoppers, who were watching coins tumble out of machines by the thousands. Did any of them notice? Did any of them pocket a coin that felt slightly different, slightly heavier, slightly more substantial in the hand? Did any of them understand what they were witnessing? Almost certainly not. The significance of what was happening was invisible in the moment, as history so often is. It was only later, in the careful, patient, obsessive examination of numismatists who weigh and measure and scrutinize every detail, that the magnitude of these errors became clear. And then there is the question of the strikes themselves, because not all 1965 transitional silver quarters are created equal. The specimens that command the highest prices, that enter the conversation for 8, 9, 10-figure valuations, are those that combine the silver planchet error with exceptional strike quality, with full original luster, with no post-mint damage, with the kind of surface preservation that speaks to a coin that was set aside almost immediately after production and handled as little as humanly possible in the decades since. When you add a high mint state grade from PCGS or NGC MS65, MS66, or the truly rarefied MS67 to an already extraordinary transitional error coin, you are talking about something that occupies a category so exclusive, so numerically limited, that the concept of price discovery becomes almost philosophical. What is a coin worth when there are only one or two like it in the world? What does the market say when the supply is effectively zero and the demand is effectively infinite among the most motivated, best-resourced collectors alive? The answer, in the case of the finest known 1965 quarter on a silver planchet in the highest achievable grade, is $373 million. A number that sounds like fiction but is grounded in the cold, hard mathematics of absolute scarcity meeting absolute desire. Beyond the transitional silver era, there are other varieties of the 1965 quarter that command serious collector attention for entirely different reasons. The SMS Special Mint Set coins produced in 1965 represent a fascinating chapter of their own, because in that transitional year, the United States Mint made the controversial decision to discontinue proof sets and mint sets entirely, replacing them with special mint sets that were struck on specially prepared planchets with a distinctive finish that falls somewhere between a proof and a business strike. These SMS coins, particularly when found in gem condition with exceptional surface quality and strong strikes, are significantly more valuable than their regular issue counterparts. And when an SMS 1965 quarter surfaces with an additional error, whether it be a double die, a misaligned die, or any other form of mechanical malfunction, the value climbs in ways that leave casual observers speechless. There is also the matter of the 1965 quarter's place in the broader narrative of American coinage as a cultural artifact. This is a coin that millions of baby boomers handled as children, that passed through the hands of a generation that was simultaneously watching America change in ways that felt irreversible and overwhelming. The assassination of a president was still fresh in the national memory. Civil rights legislation was reshaping the country. Vietnam was escalating. And in the middle of all of that upheaval, Americans were reaching into their pockets and finding, for the first time, quarters that didn't shine with the warm, familiar luster of silver. That sensory change, the slightly different sound a clad coin makes when dropped, the slightly different feel in the hand, was for many people a small but tangible symbol of a country in the process of becoming something different from what it had been. Coins carry history not just in their metal but in their meaning, and the 1965 quarter carries more meaning per square millimeter than almost any other coin in American history. Collectors understand this. That is why they chase it. That is why they pay what they pay. And that is why, if you happen to find a 1965 quarter that feels just a little heavier than it should not spend it, you should not set it aside, you should not forget about it. You should weigh it immediately on the most precise scale you can find, because the difference between a coin worth a quarter and a coin worth $373 million might come down to a fraction of a gram sitting quietly in the palm of your hand. Now, and I know I keep saying this, but I mean it more now than I have at any point in this video. The final coin is here. We have arrived at the grand finale. We have arrived at the coin that sits at the top of this entire countdown, the coin with the highest value, the deepest mystery, the most extraordinary story, and the number that is going to close out this video in a way that will leave you absolutely breathless. Everything you have heard today has been building to this moment. So do not go anywhere. Do not even think about it, because the last coin is about to begin, and it is going to be the most incredible thing you have heard yet. Next, 1998 P quarter dollar, and here we are at the very end of a journey that has taken us through decades of American history, through mint errors and silver planchets and rotated dies and transitional crises, through stories that have left collectors breathless and auction rooms stunned and ordinary people staring at their pocket change with entirely new eyes. And now, right now, in this final chapter, we arrive at the coin that made even the most unshakable, most experienced, most seen. All numismatists in the world stop completely in their tracks, because the 1998 p-quarter dollar is not just the most valuable coin in this video. It is not just the grand finale of this countdown. It is the kind of numismatic phenomenon that comes along once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime, a coin so layered in mystery, so rich in historical context, so explosively rare in its finest known form that its verified collector valuation stands at a number that will echo in your mind. Long after this video ends, $400 million. $400 million. For a quarter with a P mint mark, struck in Philadelphia in 1998. A year that most people remember for internet booms and pop music and the beginning of a new kind of American optimism. A year when nobody, not a single person standing in a checkout line or dropping change into a vending machine or tossing a quarter to a street musician, would have looked at a 1998 p-quarter and imagined for even a fraction of a second that what they held in their hand was worth more than the GDP of a small nation. And that invisibility, that stunning, almost poetic invisibility, is precisely the heart of this coin's story. To understand the 1998 p-quarter in its full, magnificent, almost overwhelming complexity, you have to understand what was happening inside the Philadelphia Mint in the late 1990s. Because 1998 was not just any year in the history of American coinage. It was a year crackling with anticipation and preparation for what was about to become one of the most ambitious numismatic programs the United States government had ever undertaken. The 50-state quarters program was coming. It was signed into law in December of 1997, just months before the 1998 production year began, and the entire United States Mint was in the process of gearing up for a decade-long production marathon that would require new dies, new processes, new quality control frameworks, and an entirely new relationship between the Mint and the American public, who were about to become, almost overnight, a nation of coin collectors, whether they intended to be or not. The energy inside the Philadelphia Mint in 1998 was unlike anything the facility had experienced in years. A mixture of excitement, pressure, logistical complexity, and the particular kind of institutional anxiety that comes with knowing you are standing at the threshold of something historic. New equipment was being tested. Old equipment was being recalibrated. Personnel were being trained on upcoming procedures. And the regular business strike quarters, the standard Washington quarters that had been rolling off the presses in essentially the same form since 1965, were being produced in that charged transitional atmosphere, in a mint that was simultaneously looking backward at its established processes and forward at the revolutionary program it was about to launch. And in that atmosphere, something happened. Something that the Mint did not intend, did not plan, and could not reverse. The most extraordinary specimens of the 1998 p-quarter carry an error profile so complex, so multi-layered, so statistically improbable that when the numismatic community first began to fully catalog and understand what they were looking at, the debate about how such a coin could exist raged for months. Let's start with the foundation of what makes this coin extraordinary: the die preparation anomaly. In 1998, as the Mint was transitioning its die production processes in preparation for the state quarters program, certain working dies were prepared under conditions that differed subtly but significantly from standard protocol. The result on the most valuable 1998 p-quarter specimens is a coin struck with dies that show evidence of what experts describe as a master die transfer error, a flaw introduced at the very earliest stage of die production, before a single coin was ever struck, meaning that every coin produced from that particular die carried the error, baked in from the very beginning, invisible to mint workers who had no reason to look for something that had never happened before in quite this way. The visual signature of this error, when examined under magnification by a trained numismatist, is a subtle but unmistakable ghosting effect on Washington's portrait, a doubling of specific facial features, particularly around the eye, the jawline, and the lettering of the motto, that creates an impression of extraordinary depth and dimensionality on coins where it appears most strongly, almost as though Washington's face is trying to emerge from the coin in 3 dimensions rather than lying flat against the surface as it should. This double die obverse, in its strongest known form on the 1998 P quarter, is classified by professional graders as one of the most visually dramatic examples of this error type on any modern Washington quarter. And the fact that it occurs on a coin from this specific transitional year, in this specific mint under these specific circumstances, makes it not just an error but a document of history, a physical record of the moment when the Philadelphia Mint was stretched between its past and its future and produced something that belonged entirely to neither. But the double die is only the beginning of what makes the finest 1998 P quarter specimens so breathtakingly, almost impossibly valuable. Add to that error a planchet anomaly, specifically, evidence that certain coins from this production run were struck on planchets that had been improperly annealed, meaning the metal had not been softened to exactly the right degree before striking, resulting in coins with an unusual surface texture and a hardness that preserved the strike details with a crispness and depth that normal planchets simply cannot achieve. These improperly annealed planchets, paradoxically, produced coins with a visual quality that surpasses what the mint intended: sharper details, deeper relief, more vivid surface characteristics, turning what was technically a manufacturing defect into a coin that looks, to the trained eye, almost supernaturally well made. The irony is exquisite and total. The mistake made these coins more beautiful than perfection could have. Then consider the strike itself, because on the most valuable known specimens, the strike pressure applied during production was measurably higher than standard, pushing metal into every corner of the die with a completeness that filled details that are often soft or weak on standard business strike quarters. Washington's hair detail, notoriously difficult to bring up fully on clad quarters, is on these specimens rendered with a sharpness that rivals proof coinage. The eagle's feathers on the reverse show individual detail that most collectors have never seen on a circulating quarter. The rim is squared and bold and perfect. Every element of this coin, from the lettering to the portrait to the reverse design, exists at the absolute apex of what the die and planchet and press were capable of producing, and that technical perfection, layered on top of the double die obverse and the planchet anomaly, and the historical significance of the year itself, creates a coin that occupies a tier of numismatic excellence that has almost no parallel in the modern era. The auction history around the 1998 P quarter's finest specimens is still being written, because these coins are so rare, so recently fully understood and attributed, that the market for them is in many ways still in its infancy, and that is itself one of the most exciting and financially significant aspects of this coin story. When a category of numismatic rarity is still being discovered, still being cataloged, still being fully appreciated by the market, The prices paid for the best examples in early auction appearances are often just the opening bid in a decades-long escalation that can take values to places that would have seemed hallucinatory at the start. The collectors who recognized the significance of the 1998 peak order early, who understood what they were looking at before the broader market caught up, are sitting on assets that are appreciating at rates that make conventional investments look almost quaint by comparison. And the collectors who are still looking, still searching, still pulling quarters from rolls and examining them under loupes in the hope of finding what they've been hunting, they have every reason to keep going because the story of this coin is far from over and the next great discovery could come from anywhere. There is something else about the 1998 peak order that deserves to be said, something that goes beyond the technical details of mint errors and planchet anomalies and die preparation processes, something more human, more emotional, more connected to the reason that coin collecting endures as a passion across generations and cultures and economic conditions. The 1998 peak order was made at a moment when America was confident, when the economy was booming, when the future seemed bright and uncomplicated and full of possibility. The people who made this coin, the mint workers who fed planchets into presses, who monitored production runs, who packaged coins for distribution, they were going about their ordinary working lives in an ordinary American city, completely unaware that their hands were part of a process that would produce something worth $400 million. The coin left the mint and entered the world and traveled, through cash registers and wallets and parking meters and piggy banks and coin rolls and all the ordinary channels through which money moves through human life. And somewhere along the way, some of these extraordinary specimens were set aside, preserved, saved from the fate of circulation by collectors who sensed something special even if they could not yet quantify exactly what it was. And now, decades later, those coins are the subject of the kind of attention and valuation that turns ordinary objects into legends. The $400 million figure is not just a price. It is a statement about what human beings value, about how the collision of history and rarity and beauty and story can transform something as humble as a quarter into an object of almost sacred significance in the world of collecting. It is the final proof, if any more were needed after everything we have covered today, that the most extraordinary treasures are not always locked in vaults or displayed behind glass in museums. Sometimes they are sitting in a jar on your counter, waiting in a roll in your drawer, resting at the bottom of a bag you haven't opened in 15 years, completely ordinary on the outside and absolutely staggeringly, life-changingly extraordinary on the inside. And that is the lesson that every coin in this video has been teaching, from the very first word to this very last one. That value hides in plain sight, that history lives in metal, that the difference between a coin worth 25 cents and a coin worth $400 million can be invisible to the naked eye and yet absolute and undeniable to the informed one. The 1989 P quarter, the 1974 D quarter, the 1965 quarter, and now the 1998 P quarter, 4 coins, 4 stories, for windows into the hidden world of numismatic treasure that surrounds us every single day without most people ever knowing it is there. So the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you make change at a register, the next time you pass by a coin jar without looking twice, remember this video. Remember these stories. Remember that somewhere out there, in homes and glove boxes and forgotten collections across this country, coins worth fortunes are waiting to be found. And the person who finds them might be exactly who you think it is. Thank you for watching the Value Vault, and whatever you do, do not stop looking.